Good evening, and welcome to this week's Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm your host, Bronwyn Lucas, and we have a distinguished guest here tonight with us, um, Brent Wolfskill. In a minute, I'll introduce him. He will tell us who he is, what he does, and all that good stuff. But if you've ever been here before, you know we start off with some deep breathing. Why? The deep breathing allows you to just sort of decompress from the day. It teaches you that this is something you can do anytime, anywhere, if you're ever a little stressed out. So here's what we're going to do. If you've never done it, I want you to get some really good deep breaths. So I want you to lightly put your hand on your stomach. Why? Because when you breathe in, you're going to breathe in so deeply, you're going to feel your stomach expand. Typically, we breathe in right here, just to our chest. So I'm going to count to four and say breathe in. I'll say breathe in and then count to four. Then I'll say breathe out and count to four. And we'll just do this 3 or 4 times and let's see how it feels. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. One more. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully that gave you a moment of relaxation. How was that breathing for you, Brett?
Breathing is so powerful. It's always a breath of fresh air. I love to do it.
Love it. I love that. It's powerful and it's a breath of fresh air. Well, I first want to thank you for being on the show and being willing to talk about mental health. It's something that's important to both of us. So tell us who you are, what you do, and something cool about yourself.
Okay. Brent Wolfskill. I am a licensed professional counselor supervisor, and I'm also a licensed chemical dependency counselor. Something cool about myself, I would say these days in such trying times, it's interesting that I have been married for 33 years and I have a child that's 20, almost 23 years old next week that just graduated college with a master's degree this past weekend, and that we have survived so much stuff together and just been through the fire, but that God has kept us in through it all. And so just to have been married for that long these days, to me, is something I find really interesting, that I see marriages as being under attack and being so hard to survive these days. And so something that's just more not as common as you think it would be. That's something that's pretty interesting.
That is true. And congratulations for your daughter graduating and being married 33 years. You're right. Nowadays, marriage and the family, I would say, are under attack. So to be married 33 years is something good. That is something to be proud of. And too much of a rarity.
Because it's not easy.
It's hard. But you did it. You have survived. So that is
Still
awesome.
surviving. Hold on, they ain't done it. I'm still doing it.
That's it. You're surviving. It's a process.
I had to work on her today. I had to work on her today.
Nah. And I'm sure she can say the same.
She would. She did.
Yes. So, tonight this is Mental Health Awareness Month. And this month I'm really focusing just on the concept of mental health awareness. Mental Health Awareness Month was first started in 1949 by a gentleman, I forgot his first name, last name was Beers, and he had been in and out of mental institutions and saw the treatment and how badly, people were treated. They were shackled, they were all of this, and this what he must.
Right.
And so we didn't, they treated mental illness was just treated horribly.
Right.
And once he became well, he really wanted to fight for the rights of those who suffered any mental illness. And that was the impetus of Mental Health Awareness Month, was just to bring awareness and say, hey, it's real. It's not anything to be ashamed of. It is something that can happen to anybody. And statistics show that 1 in 5 people have some form of mental illness, and that could be or experience some form of mental illness in their lifetime. That could be the depression you go through, the grief you go through, but I would venture to say it's even more than 1 in 5 when you think about just saying it doesn't have to be that serious mental illness, but those transient times, it's there. So that is why we are just talking about mental illness. I like to also say that mind, body, and spirit are not separate. You impact one, you impact the other. What do you think about that concept, Brent?
Well, I am consider myself a holistic therapist because we focus on mind, the body, and the spirit. They are all so important and so vital to make up one entire being, and they are all separate entities, but they are one person, and they make up one unit. And if one part is affected, it affects the entire being. It'll throw you off. And so, and you'd be surprised how many people don't consider that perspective and don't know that. And so you can't just treat the physical part without considering the mind, the mental. You can't just treat, and some people do that. So you have the doctor, the physical doctor that treats medicine. He might treat physical ailments, but then, and then you might have a spiritual healer, or some people would go to a religious facility to work on their spiritual healing or have spiritual practices, but then still leave out emotions and leave out thoughts. And that is the mind part. And that is very vital. And like when you say in your show that mental health is health, you know, and so without mental health, it'll throw everything off. And they're all like, they all make up the person, the entire team.
Right. And I think that's something we just have to, really keep focused on. That it's that whole being. We are a triune being, mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, more and more people are becoming aware of it, but it's still not out there like it needs to be.
Right. And, that's part of why I do this show, to help bring it out more and more and normalize it. I think the more we talk about it and the more we tie things into mental health, the more it's like, it's just part of who we are. I believe that, like, and you are agreeing that mental health is impacts everything and vice versa. I always say your financial health, your spiritual health. Let your finances get out of whack. You don't think your mental health is going to be a little shaky, and your spiritual health,
and your physical,
and your physical.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't address the physical because the financial is out of whack.
Right.
And you can't, and that will throw the mental health out of whack. So it's just, and let those be out of whack, and your spiritual health can be out of whack then, because it's like, Lord, why you do this to me?
Yeah. And start having physical symptoms.
Real physical symptoms.
Dealing with back issues.
I was reading a book today on grief, and it was talking about a person who had unresolved grief, and they were going to the doctor for all these physical ailments. And when the doctor was pretty smart and called in the social worker and told the social worker to do just interview and talk. And as they talked, they realized that was the issue. And even though there were physical manifestations, it was grief she was not dealing with, didn't even identify it as grief. So yes, it is so important. How would you define mental health?
Mental health is it's a condition that's mental wellness. But I would say just as a definition, mental health is the the balancing or the stability, the wholeness of one's being, the wholeness of one's being, um, and how whole a person is, and how healthy they are mentally, how healthy you are mentally. Yeah, I never really thought of putting a definition to it before.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the health of one mental stability, the
I like
health of
that.
the balance of one's mental cognition, how
Mm-hmm.
healthy one is mentally. That's mental health. How healthy someone is um, cognitively.
And you
You know,
stated an important word, balance.
yeah.
Um, when
How
I
one
hear
twenty.
you talk
Yeah.
about balance and mental balance of life and mental health, how do you think balance? I'm thinking of a lot, but I want you to start out. How do you see balance in general playing in our mental health?
Well, anytime that we get off of balance, so again, mind, body, spirit, all of those areas, and I have a good friend that would say spirit, body, mind, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, um, they all three are vital to one's whole person, and so we need to be balanced. And I have a little diagram on my wall in my office where I do counseling, um, and uh, and I've had it up there over 15 years, and I haven't even erased it. I have written it out on a board with a dry erase board, and I haven't had to erase it or change it. It's up there, and it has the different parts of a person's balance, life areas where we need to be balanced in. And I hope I can remember them all by heart. But they are the emotional needs. So they all have different emotional needs, and one needs to be balanced where they're not overstimulated, anxious, too much anxiety. Because anxiety is a part of life, anxiousness and feelings of sadness, emotions. Those are just energy in motion, emotions. And so energy is everything. It's all around us all the time. And so how balanced one is in the energy that's transmitted around them, through them, to them. How are you balancing all that? How are you balancing your thoughts? Thoughts are energy. And so how are you balancing all of that? And then you need to be balanced in the area of family, with school, with financial, with career areas of your life. You need to be balanced with your physical needs, that a person has to have time for, making time for hygiene, showers, haircuts, making cleaning the house up, um, exercise, um, in those areas. We have to have our spiritual needs in balance. How are you doing that? Are you not putting any attention and any effort, any energy into your spiritual needs? Some people in our society go to a church to get those spiritual needs met. And if they go once a week, is that enough to keep you balanced? No, it's not. Not today. In this society that we have today, it's too much stimulation to just connect with the spiritual part of yourself once a week for a couple of hours. That those practices need to be more daily. That we need to spend time, whether it's in prayer or meditation or Reiki energy or hikes out in the trails where we can escape from the stimulation of the world and retreat to the divine God that lives within, and that we can connect with that space, because that is the spiritual part of it. And we need to be balanced where we spend time with that space. And so many people don't do that because we're addicted to busyness in our society, and everybody is too busy. We're overstimulated, which is all anxiety is, that we're overstimulated. And then you want to be balanced. What am I forgetting? Is it something else? I think that's about, recreation, social recreation. And so some people work all the time. And that's why we ask, what hobbies do you have? What do you do for fun? And a lot of people don't have hobbies, don't do anything for fun. And so all work and no play is no good either. And so we need to have outlets. We need to have some balance in that area. Um, We can't, I find that my people that don't have a lot of hobbies, they do things like the world has a place for you. The world creates hobbies for people that don't have any hobbies. And so that's why we have people addicted to sports. I watch a little sport, but I'm talking about it's people that are addicted to every sport that comes out year round, watching sports year round, or they're addicted to gambling, or addicted to drinking, or addicted to drugging, or addicted to partying, and this kind of, gambling. And I don't know if I said gambling, going to the casinos and different things like that, or just clubbing. And so the world has, or TV, television, and the world has a place for those that aren't able to find healthier outlets to channel energy and get that need for social recreational medicine. So, but
I
balancing
agree.
those.
And yet, balance is so, so important. I agree with all those areas you talked about. And when any of them are out of balance or completely lacking, we are deficient. And when you're lacking in one, that means your whole being is deficient. Just like you said, those who work, 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 and no social life. Well, then you eventually resent work and still can become ill because there is no balance, no release from work. What do? I wake up and go to work and then come home, eat, go to sleep, and wake up and go to work. Well, then you have no emotional release from that. And
Yeah,
so it can throw your emotions out. And the physical, we neglect, especially people, you still people who have desk jobs. I read something years ago that said sitting is the new smoking in terms of, you sit so much, it's tearing up down our bodies. And I can think on days when if I have like 7 clients in one day, by the time you get up at the end of the day, you're stiff, you're sore. So I now make sure I move between each client. I literally go get on the bike 5 minutes and go come back and see another client, walk around. But we've got to, do that. And that's part of that balance. Are we balancing even in a micro way? Am I balancing my movement with my sitting? You can't do all of one or the other. So balance, looking at the holistic view of life, balance is so important. Your mind, your body, your physical, your spiritual. Are you spending that quiet time? We're talking about moving, but is there the quiet time of spiritual reflection?
yeah.
So
So
yes, we need the busy, we need the quiet, we need the work, and we need the fun.
yeah,
You're right. I totally agree with that. We hear the words. I'm going to throw another definition out, get you to define something else. In your opinion, how would you define emotions? That we hear about talking about being emotionally balanced. So, what are emotions?
Oh, well, I said that a little earlier. Emotions stands for energy in motion, emotions. So energy in motion, and all energy is everything. And we learned that formula in school in science class, where energy is everything. E equals mc squared.
Mhm.
And so when we can really understand that, I have a little prop that I use in my office called an energy stick that I like to let people show. And it's a display that lights up, that gives people a visual of what energy looks like. And they can see when energy is channeled, and you can give it a visual. And so energy is very real, and it's all around us. We all have an aura all around us all the time that you can't see, but it's there. And so the energy stick kind of gives just people a visual to be able to look at. And it's always a real eye opener for them. I actually just showed it to someone about 30 minutes ago before we got on the show. And I like to do that usually during my first or second session, just kind of really introducing people to mental health and the power that we have, and the power that we have over our own energy in motion. And so those emotions are, they're housed inside the body, and generally in our solar plexus, which is the stomach area of our body. And so that's generally where the emotions are held. And so we feel those emotions in our heart and in our stomach. And that's why we carry anxiety and stress around there. That's why we eat for stress many times.
Mhm.
Or people will get an ulcer from worrying because they're carrying energy and they're overstimulated in that area. And if it's not processed and dealt with, that energy becomes real, and it can create different types of diseases in the body. It can create ulcers. It can create stress. It can create anxiety. It can create difficulty sleeping and loss of appetite and all different types of manifestations that come from that energy if it's not processed in a healthy way. But
You know, I like to when talking about, energy and emotions, I'm going to give you all the example that I give people. And I'll ask you this question, Brent. Have you ever walked in a room where people had been arguing and you didn't hear the argument, but you sit in their face and you feel the tension in the room?
Oh, definitely.
You can live, and you're like, oh, I want to leave. You feel it. Then the next example is, have you ever been to the birthday party of a 1-year-old? It's really for the adults because a 1-year-old doesn't know what's going on. But what is the energy like? Doesn't it feel good?
Yeah.
Just walking in there, even if you've been feeling bad, you walk in, you feel it. Both examples for me are how emotions, as you say, have that energy around them. You literally can feel it on your body. You feel good when you're in the room with that 1-year-old birthday party. They eat the cake and they make a mess and everybody's laughing and you feel the joy. But if someone's arguing, you feel tense. You're ready to leave. You want to escape because it's not good. So I look at that emotions and saying that our emotions impact those around us too. So, we, like you said, we carry a certain amount of energy around us and it impacts those who we encounter. And I think sometimes we don't even think about how much what we're feeling impacts others. When I work with parents and they'll say, well, we never argue in front of the kids. And then this is people who are getting a divorce. I say, how long have you two been unhappy together? Oh, 5 years. You don't think your kids could pick up on something is not right? And I use that example about how you feel. When you're rolling your eyes at him and he's rolling his eyes at you, and you are the feeling too behind that eye roll, your kids can pick up on it. So our emotions and our emotional state is obvious even when we think it isn't. I don't know. What do you think about that?
One of the things I like to empower people with is to start being aware of their own energy, because it is your power to be aware of your own thoughts, but your energy and how you use it, how you protect it, your peace, and how you can be sensitive to it. But when I work with people, or when we're overstimulated and we're so busy and we're so plugged in to working and everything else except us, and we make us the least priority and everything else is the priority, we are less sensitive to our own energy. And so, and we're not even sensitive to others. So we're all over the place. Our energy's all over the place. And so I can feel that. I feel when people come in my office and their energy is I feel it every time. And so I've created a safe space in that place for everybody that comes in. And the atmosphere is intentionally, by design, set up to create a space that no matter what you're going through in the world, when you walk in here, you can shut that out of there. And so everything from the ambiance, the music, the smells, the lighting, the scenery, the stuff on the wall, everything is done by design intentionally to create that energy. And so when they walk in, if they were in traffic and they were rushing, or they had a busy week, and they come in, I can feel it. It's like, it's heavy. And I'll say, just have a seat, unload, get yourself comfortable, just unplug for a little while. And like you took the deep breaths before we start, and just let them kind of gather themselves and connect with their own being. Connect with your spirit first, because that's who I want to talk to. I don't want to talk to the stressed out person. I need to reach the spiritual part of you, because that's where the healing and the transformation and the manifestation that's deeply rooted will take place. That's where the strong roots and the strong healing will come from, connecting with that part of yourself. And so by the time they leave, of course, they are connected with that place. And so you want to help them to be able to protect their energy and to protect their peace, because the people we're around, we feed off of others' energy. And so if you're around a negative environment, I worked in the school district for, did it too for 16 years. And the energy up in there was hectic and it was chaotic, and it's getting tougher for the staff in that environment and for the kids too, and so and they're about to get summer break, and and so a lot of them like to let loose and go on vacations and all of that for the summertime because it's a real tough space to be in. And so just really empowering people. And it's almost impossible to do that. Not totally impossible, but it's very challenging to be in certain environments and protect your energy. It's difficult. Sometimes you have to make the decision to choose yourself over that environment. And I did. I got out early, and I think you did too for that same reason. You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes we have to make hard choices and choose us over comfort, over familiarity.
And that is hard for people to do. I think a lot of times in situations where the job itself is really harming your mental health, but you need to check. And it's like, but we, because still as a society, we look down on mental health. It's no big deal. Just suck it up. But in that sucking it up, you are sucking the life out of you.
Yeah.
So you can't just suck it up.
No, you can't.
Because as we talked about earlier, it will lead to physical health.
It's going to. It will. It is.
People who will give an example that is common in the African American community, and that is high blood pressure. Well, there is a relationship between high blood pressure and the stress you're feeling and the anxiety you're feeling. So when that job is causing you mental anxiety, it can also impact your physical health. And so, yes, it's such a relationship. You were talking about this. The next thing I was going to ask you about is getting people comfortable out talking about mental health and their issues. Do you ever find that there are times when people are coming to therapy, but they're still resistant to want to talk? I'm here, I'm in your office. Maybe it's a couple, maybe someone who was sent to therapy. You need to go work on anger. You need to do this. Do you ever find that? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Okay, I generally don't have that issue too much anymore. I used to when I worked with clients that were kind of forced into it, like in the school district, when someone else signs you up for therapy except you, or if you get a child sometimes, and I don't work with a whole lot of kids these days, and even my kids that I do have, just a handful, they talk, and or they won't come, and so. But once upon a time, that was a challenge. And so, and then I worked with foster care for a lot of years. And sometimes those children had a lot of different therapists, and they're not looking for someone to come in and tell them what to do and control their life. And so they might not be as open in the beginning. And so I just focused on developing a relationship. And when that happens, and so just treating them as a person and talking about life issues, developing rapport, and meeting them where they were at. I couldn't bring them to where I want them to be until I go where they're at, and then I kind of had to bring them along slowly. And those processes take a little longer, and but it's their journey and not mine. And but these days, probably because I don't take insurance, and my clients are pretty serious. They're paying out of pocket, and it's not cheap. So they are invested, and so they're coming and they want to get all their money's worth. They talk. So, they're happy to be there and grateful to be there and appreciative. And so those are typically the clients that I get today. And so, but once upon a time when I did get those clients, we focused on building a relationship, especially with the foster kids. And I just showed them that I cared. And eventually they would open up and talk a little bit. It might not be a whole lot of healing taking place, but it was therapeutic. and it was helpful for where they were at that moment. And so, sometime in this ministry, in this profession, we're just planting seeds, and that we don't get to see grow, and we just water them and nourish them, and somebody else will get to see the fruit and eat the fruit of it. But that's not always our job. We don't get to see that all. Today, I do get to see a lot of that, more so than I used to, and I'm grateful for that. And that's a blessing when you get to see the fruits of the labor that God has blessed you with.
You know, we have similar paths because at one point I did a lot of work with kids in the foster care system, and I was with the really young ones. And that was hard to know if you're making a difference. I mean, I've ranged from the really young ones, 4-year-olds, to, 14-year-olds in the same day,
Yeah,
maybe in the same setting. And it was harder to deal with. And they were more resistant. And you're so right, relationships are important. And I like to tell people who are even considering, I think I want to go to therapy. Go, it's good, do it.
yeah,
And relationship is important. And I'm glad you brought that out because that's something um, that is important. I tell people if you don't vibe with your therapist, find another one. If you don't,
yeah,
if you just, give it a few sessions and if you're not feeling them, it's about relationship because if you're going to bare your soul and want someone to really listen, there has to be relationship. So I'm glad you pointed that out. That relationship is a very important part of the therapeutic process. Um, and I too don't see as much resistance with clients now, working with adults. I can think of one recently I had that he wanted to be there, but didn't know how to open
yeah.
up. And it was just, well, let's just talk. And there were moments of just silence,
Hmm.
but building that trust and letting them talk is so important. Um, so yeah, relationship. And that is the key to human interaction, that positive relationship. And relationship is something we all want. You know, we were created to be in relationship with others, not in
Yeah,
isolation.
for
So
sure.
that is so important.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to sort of talk about a couple of things, and one is suicide. I want
Mm.
to bring that out because I heard this comment as recently as this week, referring to someone saying they only say they were suicidal. They just want attention. And my contention is, okay, if so, that's a pretty drastic thing to do to get attention. So something is needed there by way of attention. But just talk to me a little about suicide, your thoughts about people who are suicidal, the concept that, oh, it's not real, they just want attention, or I don't know, what can you say to that?
My experience with suicide, and I've heard that comment too about just wanting attention a lot of times, is that I've had, I've probably had at least 1,000 in my whole 30-year career, at least 1,000 people say that they had some thoughts of self-harm. And,
Mhm.
and I've probably had maybe 2 or 3 actually try. So the numbers are lower, but it's, uh, I'm starting to see more and more incidents of people that are suicidal and that have more serious chronic mental health challenges that they're dealing with, especially this younger generation. They are so overstimulated, so over through the phones and through social media, through their food, their unhealthy diet, through their music, through their video games, through their disruption with sleep and vaping, which creates so much extra anxiety and anxiousness and negative stimulation. It affects their breathing, their blood flow, and all of that. And so that's creating disease inside of their body. And so they're not going to feel good because mentally they're going to be off. Physically, they're going to be off. And so, but my experience with suicide and self harm is when people get just so overwhelmed physically, emotionally, and they have no positive outlets. and they are completely off balance in that area. And they start to experience hopelessness at returning to stability, returning to balance, that the pain starts to become so unbearable, so overburdening that they just want the pain to stop. They don't want to hurt anybody. They don't want to hurt their family. They just want the pain to stop, and they don't want to die and be gone forever. They just don't want to be in
Mm-hmm.
pain. And sometimes the thought of suicide, the thought of death, just seems like a quick fix to end the pain, end the suffering, to bring some balance back to you, and not realizing that it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem that they have taken on themselves, and there's no coming back from that. And the damage is traumatic, generational. They have done so much spiritual damage for generations in their family when they do that. And they don't really understand that in the moment. They just want to stop hurting. And,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes they do it out of anger because they're so angry at everybody else and they want to hurt somebody that they'll do it. And but it's still just being overwhelmed. The combination of being overwhelmed, emotion. Nobody's ever in a great mood and kills themselves.
Right.
Yeah, it's because they're overwhelmed emotionally and they had poor coping outlets and they were off balance. And so that's why mental health is so important. That's why we're seeing a rise in suicides and threats of suicide and mass shootings and all that. Those are direct mental health issues and issues of domestic violence. People are overburdened and overstimulated, and it is causing a mental health crisis in our society, and we are not effectively dealing with it enough. We're not even scratching the surface, and it's getting worse. And this is the battle. This is a spiritual battle. This is a battle between the dark forces and God, and
Mm-hmm.
evil and goodness. And so the world's going to keep offering us busyness, distraction, the temptations, the money, and all of that stuff to pull your attention. And God offers peace and love and patience and joy. And it's like, which one are we going to choose? Well, it's money and this flashy, shiny thing sure looks good and attractive. And I want a nice trip and I want all of that. Well, there's a price for that. And the price
Mm-hmm.
is generally your peace, to get all of that type of stuff. So, those things come with a cost. Okay.
They do. And it points out, like you said, the need to address just mental health. And that's why this month was focused on just the concept of mental health. I want to go back real quick. You talked about suicide and self harm. Talk a little about the difference because a lot of people really are not aware of what it means, what self harm is. So, could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay. In any type of behavior that's harmful to self. And suicide is just a form, but there are people that do cutting. They take this cutting up skin, they will take something, razor blades, a knife, a sharp object, and cut. And because the pain on the inside is so uh, powerful and so damaging and hurting, they just need a distraction. And so they want something on the outside to take their mind off of this pain. And I believe we talked before, and you talked about tattooing. Some people just are addicted to tattoos, and they'll say, "Well, I like them," but it also is an expression of letting out that pain, letting out some of the pain they're feeling in their heart and on the inside, and it will kind of give them a distraction. Um, uh, Overeating can be a form of self-harm. When it starts to cause medical challenges and problems and we can't stop, that's a form of self-harm. We just don't consider it that
Mm.
sometimes. Um,
Hadn't thought about it, but yes, I see that.
and risky sexual behavior,
Hmm.
promiscuity, things like that are harming, but they feel good. They're pleasurable to the flesh, but they do a lot of damage. They self-harm and they destroy. They destroy the soul, but they feel good. We love pleasure. And so anything that, it could be a gambling. When you go and gamble money you don't have, you get addicted to, and somebody now wants to break your legs because you owe money.
Mhm.
It could be so much stuff, drinking and over drinking and driving. It could be all different types of forms of self harm. But some of the common ones that we see in the mental health field are the addictions, and like I talked about, the gambling, the food, the sex, and the cutting. Those are some of the more
Mhm.
common ones we see with the children. And
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I've heard Cutter say that it reminds them they're real and they're alive. Oddly enough, they feel grounded when they feel the pain because they're so dissociated with themselves that the emotional pain, they're so busy numbing it. To feel physical pain reminds them they're alive. Now, that's definitely a mental health issue, but yes, you would find that. And the same with the tattooing. I hurt, so if I do this, I can focus, I can put my pain, my thought of pain into the physical pain, and it takes away for me having to experience the physical pain, the
yeah,
emotional
yeah, and we don't like pain. Most people can't really
pain. Mhm.
connect with that. We don't like to feel pain,
Right.
and so that's what self harm is about. They're feeling pain somewhere else, and they don't want to
Hmm.
feel that. It gets so bad that they need it to shift. So
Right.
we as people don't like pain.
We don't like pain. And that's why it's hard for people to understand self harm. Well, how are you going to cut yourself?
Yeah,
Because the physical, emotional pain is so severe, you want to eliminate it. And it's worse than the physical pain.
right.
As we get ready to wrap up, believe it or not, it's about that time. I'm going to ask you this before I end my show with a challenge each week, a call to action. I'm going to give you this one question. What can you say to a person to encourage them to seek out therapy? There are people who may be listening who may see this as it goes out who are like, I don't know about that. What can you say to encourage somebody to give therapy a try?
I would just let them know that they're valuable, they're worth it, and everybody needs a team. Everybody needs somebody on your team. I have someone on my team. I have a team. I could not be a husband. I could not be a good father. I could not be a good leader. I could not be a good therapist, a good man of God without having my own team. And it has really been a great a great benefit to me in my life to have a team, to have people to go to have people around me. And so I was blessed enough to learn the power of uh, sharing our troubles with one another, cast your cares on one another and on God, not something outside of you, and sharing with one another so that we might be healed. And so I learned the power of that early in life, and God was able to bless me to use this to help other people. And so it is powerful. It is real. Mental health is real. There's no shame in it. And God doesn't want us to feel ashamed. We don't have to suffer. Go and find you someone to talk to. Use your benefits. You have to pay for it. It's an investment in yourself. You don't have to go all the time, but just like you have a medical doctor, if you have a physical ailment, go get you a mental healer, a mental professional. If you're dealing with some mental challenges at times, you just need someone to process emotions with and make sure it's a safe space. But we are so worth it. We want to be in balance in our emotions, and we cannot do it by ourselves. Go get some help at learning how to build you a successful coping plan.
That is very encouraging. And I'll just add to that anybody at any time could need some help in that area. You're just human. It's not a weakness. I always like to end the show with a call to action, something you can do as a result of listening today. And so I'd say the first point is um, understand that having issues in your mental health doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you as a person. No more than having high blood pressure means you're bad as a person. It's just an area of your life that needs to be addressed. So mental health is real. Take care of your mental health so it can take care of you. The second thing I'd say is if you need help, reach out. Um, there you can go to the website Psychology Today. Type in if you have insurance. You can type in what kind of insurance you have, what you want. Do you want a male? Do you want a female? Do you want a certain ethnicity? Do you want a certain religious background? You can literally type in all of those descriptors and find somebody. Brent and I are both here. You can look us up. But if we're not the person for you, I always say, if I'm not the person for you, I want you to get help. I'll help you find the person for you. But reach out and get the help. And my last point always is, and probably always will be an educated voter. How you vote impacts your mental life and mental health. How? There are laws that can be impacted that can impact your mental health. In the state of Texas, money has been taken out of mental health. That's done by your legislators. So how you vote can impact your mental and physical well-being. So be an educated voter. I am Bronwyn Lucas, the caring counselor, here to help you become a better you. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we'll have one more week of just talking about the concept of mental health next week. And once again, thank you, Brent, for joining us. Thanks.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you guys next week.